I guess I skipped a step, which is, would anyone like to be a note taker today?
I can do it.
Fantastic, thanks, Sergeant. Looking around, I don't see any new faces. If you're a new face, announce yourself. Maybe I can't see you in my Zoom. I'm not hearing any announcements. I guess we can move on to the outstanding project level RFCs. Let me pull these up and I can share my screen. All right. So we've got a few of them here. We'll start from the bottom. This semantic versioning RFC.
Yeah, regarding that RFC, I believe I have resolved all the outstanding change requests, but I think like there are like a couple of questions or whatever, a couple of threads remaining.
Okay. So it's ready for further review.
Yep. I can change the number of the RFC and everything. I can do that after this.
Sure. Okay. Moving on, we've got standardized log level configuration. I think this is approved. It just needs to be like merged. Yeah, it looks like everything's good. I can merge this after the meeting. I think I said that last week and then forgot. All right, next up, collocate all Paketo RFCs.
Hold up. The only thing that I'm looking for this is for Ryan or someone on the core team to go in and add maintainers to the review for this. I believe that was something that you brought up as something you wanted to do. Other than that, I think I've addressed all of the issues here. Emily, there was one part to your issue that I'm not sure I addressed. I'll take a look at that right after this.
It was about the forking question. I feel like this has come up on CMP and Paketo a couple of times where like in trade-offs for workflows, there is a bias against forking, but I've never totally understood it. I kind of wanted someone to explain to me like practically like when is the forking a problem, because it's basically the same thing, right? You just push to the fork and make a PR.
Yeah, well, for me it was less of a I think that it's a burden and more of the way that the process works now is you're the owner inside of the repo, so you can just create whatever branch, whatever like that. So it's just a change. I don't really care either way, to be honest with you, because I also don't have a huge problem with just forking a repository.
On a meta level, it's a little annoying with when we're pairing and stuff, but I don't think that really applies to this. Like if we're on like a shared machine or whatever, for folks that are not all have the same permission levels.
That makes sense. I can see how it'd be hard to work in a pair and a fork, right?
But it's totally like workable. Like it's just a minor annoyance, really.
Because I'm not opposed to changing permissions if it's even if it's a minor annoyance, if it's enough of an annoyance, like we can try to make it better for folks. But I hadn't really been thinking about the pairing angle. That makes more sense.
I think it's, in my opinion, I'm willing to just go ahead and remove that as a set of questions entirely.
Okay. Yeah, do we have a list of folks who I should be adding as reviewers who are maintainers? Do you want me to just like go through the entire list of all maintainers for all teams and just add people on here?
I can compile, you can only have up to 10 reviewers, right? Can you add groups as maintainers? Could you do like
yes.
Paketo, Buildpacks? Yeah. I guess just
there's more than 10 groups.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this is something that you were talking about. It might be good to have the individuals come in and approve, because that's, you know, where we're removing RFCs from.
Yeah, I would be happy if just folks not necessarily did a actual review check mark, but just left a comment saying yes, like with a thumbs up. I think that's probably sufficient for us to get around any sort of addition of reviewers and limitations of
Okay.
like number of reviewers.
In that case, then I can go in and I'll just write a one really big message where I at every maintainer group and ask them to leave comments below.
Great.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll add each one in a separate issue, and then we'll be able to see when we reach quorum for particular maintainer groups.
Just do them as a list with checkboxes, and then when people respond, you can just check off the checkboxes.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, anything else on this RFC? Cool. Next up, we have Paketo build pack list builders. Glad to see that portmanteau, that travesty of a portmanteau, is getting used here.
Oh yeah, it's codified. Yeah, so I guess updates on this are, after the last feedback, I went in and addressed like the question of naming. Also, Dan, I did a little analysis per your request of just like, what would this mean in terms of increased overhead and also like reduced overhead? So you'll find that in there. And then in the interest of reducing the overhead of adding more builders, I've proposed co-locating the config files in the existing builder repos, and then just pushing the build pack list builders to different tags. So yeah, feel free to take a read. It's changed a little bit in terms of like the actual implementation since last time.
Okay. And last up here, triage party. I don't think this one has been discussed previously. Andy, did you want to give some background?
I can give some background. I did kind of want to be able to give a demo with a little bit of a more customized view of this, but let me see if I can pull this up and share my screen. So, 1 second. So triage party, let me see. Actually find the link to it. Where did it go? It's over there. 1 second. So triage party is this open source tool, and it's loading right now. Let's look at the home page. But triage party is this open source tool by Google, and what it allows you to do is point at a bunch of repositories and basically ingests all the data and lets you kind of filter it, and potentially one thing that's interesting is that it lets you kind of, as a group, go through and triage a bunch of items quickly. The interesting thing about it is you can basically customize all of the filtering rules, and there's a language to do that. But I guess kind of this problem that was looking to solve with this is that we have a lot of repositories, like over 100, and it's hard to keep track of all the open issues and kind of the tags on them and so on and so forth. And so this could be a tool that is useful for getting an overview and for like triaging and filtering by tags across all repositories. So it can do things like tell you, like, and again, all of these kind of rules are customizable, but it's pointing at all of these repos right now, and like these are the ones that haven't been responded to in like more than 7 days and things like that. So things that need attention, you can flag. You can get basic statistics around like the average wait time for an issue. You can have like rules that are like based on your workflow, like things you should look at weekly, rules that you want to look at weekly, or like P0s or so basically I was hoping to customize this a little bit more and maybe show how it could be useful for some of our workflows, and then potentially put it as a kind of top level hosted thing under as a subdomain to the Paketo website. But I think I need a little bit more buy-in and maybe a little more time to customize it and show off what it can do a little bit more, because this is just kind of the default configuration. But my main ask is initially, like, I need a repository to put the config file, and I don't really have that. So I don't know if we need, I'm happy to just do the customization and like get buy-in first, but it would be cool to have a place to put this config file. And I guess I can do it on my own branch or whatever to begin with. Sorry if folks have more questions or.
What are some of the potential ways you see kind of organizing this?
So a couple of things, rules around, like, I guess we could potentially do things like tabs for family groups, and then would make it easier to kind of look at in a family group what has, or like basically new inbound issues and things that haven't been responded to. And then we could kind of potentially make it a little bit easier for folks to keep track of that, since we have kind of a lot of these repositories. That's one idea. Another kind of workflow is like, and again, there's other ways to do this, but we've kind of been tagging things with like potential priority or status prioritized. And so basically the idea of nominating issues potentially to be included, to like bubble up as something that we want to address sooner and be prioritized. And then I guess potentially, if people wanted to use it as the triage party thing, you can like say, there's 10 of us, and all it is really is a read-only link. So you can just click on each of these and it just basically opens the GitHub issue, but then you don't have to keep track of all the various repos that it's in. You can just kind of go down your sliced up section and work through things. But again, I think I'd like to customize it a little bit more to make it fit the way that we work, and maybe show it off again. But that's kind of the basics of it. Some other things that are kind of interesting, and I know right now the teams are using the Kanban boards that are built, the project boards that are built into Google, but you could potentially, like, it does have a Kanban type thing like that could be used, or a view that could be used that kind of goes across all repositories without having to move things from the repo to the special GitHub boards. But that's an optional idea, which isn't really fleshed out yet.
I had a quick question.
Mhm.
I read through your RFC and I saw that you mentioned maybe this as an alternative to the Paketo dashboard.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. Because that is like definitely like a very different view. It shows like a lot of other information.
Yeah. I think mostly for me, it's an alternative just because for the community to get an overview of what's happening, because the dashboard, you need your own personal GitHub key, and this you just need one, and it kind of is smart enough to cache the issues and not kind of basically hit the rate limit. That could be a potential thing that happens on the other thing. I think they're less kind of complementary. Like, I'm not saying we need to get rid of the other thing, but this is being worked on by more folks, and potentially, could be customized a little bit more easily with less engineering effort.
Can you add pull requests on here as well, or can you only do issues? Because that would be
Yeah.
really nice.
I think you can add pull requests. I think there's even a section somewhere for pull requests. But I can take a look at that. But yeah, that's what I guess I mean. I want to customize it a little bit. This is again just like kind of the default config that I think like Minikube or something uses this tool, and this is like their default config.
I guess the question I want to ask is like, why do we need to make a repository in the Paketo org in order to like try this out?
I guess we don't need to. I don't know where to put it. Like, I'm happy to host it on like AndyMo / whatever and customize it there. I just like, yeah, that I guess that's fine. It's more about like, yeah, that's.
I guess the second follow up I have is like, I think the thing that makes me not want to provide a repository at the moment is we haven't established any sort of like regular process of using Triage Party to
Sure.
do parts of like triaging of our issues.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to see that before I would be like, yes, this makes sense to have in Paketo because of the fact that we use it to like solve particular problems.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think I see the potential. I just would like to see us actually use it.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, you know, coming from this as from the, like, we're an open source project and I'm like, not like, we're not all at the same company working on this, like, fine. But I just, you know, wanted to keep it slightly, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, happy to like come back to this after I've customized it and maybe worked with some people to see what might be useful for them or not in terms of like rules and things that maintainers like want to see, and then we could revisit it. If that makes sense. Cool. Maybe I can figure out how to make it not so bright colored as well.
Make it Paketo colors.
Yeah.
Could
All right,
community be a place where, like, if we, you know, decide to try out this process as a community, we could put it, and, you know, if it doesn't work out, we can always delete it. It's not like we're committing to it for life.
I mean, I don't honestly care that much if it's on
Yeah.
my thing, and like, I just, I think the community thing is another discussion I'd like to have, because community, the licensing is super unclear to me. That is a tangent from this, honestly, but yeah, I'll just put it in my personal thing and do some customization and get
Yeah,
some more feedback.
I think that for me, reading through the RFC, it seems like having some real usage of this, figuring out where it fits in the larger like communities workflows, I think is a prerequisite for like us saying
totally.
like, yeah, this is going to be something. And I don't think that there's any blockers on of a like governance or political nature that would prevent you from just having your own repo that you have the configuration in and deploying a triage party and us like iterating on using it and seeing how it works. Yeah.
And again, I meant to do that sooner, but you know, it was just, RFC was kind of just sitting there and I hadn't gotten to that part of it. So, but yeah, we can revisit it. I'll do that.
So on the RFC, what you're looking for from us, maintainers and users, is just any rules or configuration that we might find helpful or want to see in an example.
I guess maybe information like you're searching for, or I can add some more notes, but like tags or kind of things that you find yourself looking for across lots of repositories, with like, because basically I can bubble things up and put things in sections, like basically like using any piece of data that's attached, like labels, PRs, dates and times, aging of issues, that kind of stuff. and can be bubbled. Like I'm just looking for maybe ideas on how to organize things a little bit more.
Would it
like-
would it be helpful if maintainers go in with a sort of like almost like a wish list of like, you know, like as a maintainer or as a maintainer of a specific sub team, I would love to be able to see blah, you know, and then you can like
Yeah,
see if
that would
that's
be
like
cool.
possible.
Or you could wait for, like, I don't want to like ask for you all to do a bunch of work. I'm happy to like iterate and like make, yeah. So happy to have like stuff that you would like to see, and happy to just like try and do a thing and see, hey, is this closer to being useful or not? And iterate on it that way. So either way is great.
Looking at the top level pages, or I'm just guessing based on what I was imagining from what I saw in that view, but it seems like
Mhm.
we can maybe have like pages for different sub teams, right?
You could have pages for sub teams. I believe, I think you need to do, like, would need to label things with, for that. I have to look like, I'm not sure if I can, so you kind of give it a list of repositories. I'm not sure if I can split it like based on the repositories alone. I think maybe you, like, if we had node stuff, you could split it by labels potentially. So that might be a little bit like tricky to like keep maintained, like in terms of like splitting up, for instance, Java and other language build packs. But I'll look at that a little bit more.
If that was easy, I think one thing that could be interesting is, you know, give sub teams more autonomy. Like we could have sort of a, you know, general idea of what a good triage flow looks like, but we could let maintainers of a given sub team sort of curate their process and their view.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Can I get screen share back?
Yes, you can. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, and I think that was the last RFC in the top level RFC section. Moving on to the language specific RFCs. The only one we have here is this WIP one that's been a WIP one for a while. I don't think there was anything that needed to get discussed here.
Guess we need to decide if we're going to allocate, like, spend more time on it or not. Maybe we can talk about that, Tim and I.
Okay.
I'll just actually write it down.
Okay. Then moving on to the remainder of agenda items here, we've got Hugo modules, docs, walkthrough.
Yeah, I tossed this on here as like a proposed topic, which is that as like a trial, I moved some of the Paketo documentation out of the Paketo website repo and into one of the language family repos. And there's like a bunch of automation that goes along with that. Since 99% of what I did is like completely, you know, in the open source, I'm happy to like give that walkthrough now in this group if that's of interest to people. Would we, you know, if people want that, say yes, also happy to defer to a different space.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to see it.
Cool. In which case, maybe we can go to the subsequent item and just cover that so we have time for it.
Okay. Yeah, so then removing old maintainers / contributors, the only other item here.
Yeah, I wrote this one. More just a question, I guess. We've spoken about this in the past, but I'm not sure we documented the process anywhere. Like, how do we decide when to remove old maintainers and contributors that are no longer active on their teams?
We approved an RFC for accepting people's emeritus status or
Yes.
prompting a conversation about moving them to their emeritus status if they're incommunicado.
Is
So-
there like a specific time frame for when we like decide to start moving them to their status, or it's just whenever someone else realizes and wants to, you can call out another contributor or maintainer to be moved to emeritus?
We purposefully left it vague, hoping that it would be obvious and also contextual, so it's not like if someone goes on parental leave for like, it's been 3 months, we have to initiate the kicking you out process, we can sort of play it by ear. I know there are a couple ones, at least on the Java side, that folks that aren't contributing anymore that we should probably do that with.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, formally, the process that I've been trying to establish is, you'll notice that there are on the GitHub Teams page. So like if you click through Teams and look at the teams that you belong to, there's like a discussion thread that you can post stuff to. I've been posting like votes to have folks be retired for different sub teams. We've also had folks who voluntarily posted that they requested to be retired. So yeah, I think like for the case that you're talking about, where like somebody has maybe left the project and it's they're not going to be coming back to voluntarily retire from their position, I think you should feel free that if it's unambiguous at this point that they're not involved in the project, to just post that you're creating a vote to see that they be retired, and like then you allow some time for the folks who are maintainers on that sub team to retire them.
Gotcha. Where's that discussion board?
So if you go to the Paketo Buildpacks page, there's this Teams link here at the top.
Mhm.
And then the list of teams here. So if I went to say .NET Core, I can see this
Oh, cool.
discussion thread that exists for a specific team.
Cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. So there's across a number of these, there's already like posts for doing exactly what you're talking about.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? Cool. Then Frankie, if you're ready, I will cede the floor to you.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So I guess I can, oh, sorry. I will share my screen. I've got a little like one-pager doc that kind of like introduces some things. I'm happy to just copy and paste some or all of this into the agenda as the notes, just to make your life easier, Arjun, because I did kind of write it up. Oh, wait. Let me try that again. Okay, hopefully folks are seeing like a Google Doc and then also my terminal.
Great background.
Thank you. I picked it myself. Okay. So I guess I can make these bigger. Not that it's that helpful. Great. So I guess as an introduction, the documentation for Paketo.io mostly lives in the Paketo website repo here, as many of you know. Here it is, very exciting. Much of the markdown that makes our docs live inside of content docs, like for example, Buildpacks, language family Buildpacks, Java. There you go. So this like trial was basically to relocate this docs content out of this Paketo website repo and into the language family repos that like sort of correspond topically. So you'll notice that in this list here, you do not see .NET Core, even though that's a language family that Paketo supports. That's because those docs live in the .NET Core language family repo, which I'll show shortly. So why did I try doing this? There were a few goals of this attempt. First of all, we want to try to bring the documentation closer to the code that it's documenting. Like if you're implementing a feature for .NET Core, maybe it makes more sense to open a pull request to the language family than to this like completely separate repo when you're trying to maintain the docs. We wanted to simplify the process of cutting releases of documentation, which has previously been gated on like the content maintainers pretty much, and was completely not correlated to the Buildpacks release process. We also wanted to ensure that features are documented if and only if they've been released. So not get the docs out before the Buildpacks or vice versa. And then to that end, we want to explore whether Hugo modules, which is like this sort of Go submodule thing that Hugo supports, is actually helpful to meet the goals listed above, which, you know, wasn't necessarily clear. And to also think about whether these above stated goals are actually like helpful. If we succeed in these goals, do we have a better docs experience? That's also not super clear. So really, in short, feedback on this whole thing is welcome. And it's totally fair to say like, yeah, stuff moved around, but like it didn't actually make things better. And that's helpful information. So just keep that in mind as you see what's going on. So just quickly, some background on Hugo modules. Here's a link to the documentation for Hugo modules. I won't go there now, but you'll have that for later. Basically, Hugo is implemented in Go, and it's the thing that runs the Paketo website. And because of that, you can have your Hugo site have a Go mod. And because of that, your Hugo site can import other Go modules. And so this is what Hugo modules are. It's simply having other code that is also a Hugo module that your main project can then incorporate. So for example, if we look right now at the Paketo website, we can see that it has a Go mod, like a Go project. And you can see here that it requires this submodule, Paketo Buildpacks .NET Core docs. And it's indirect because I think the way that Hugo actually like pulls in these dependencies is not like, it's not a true import in the way that we would expect. And so they get annotated with this indirect thing. So inside Paketo website, this is what the submodule or what the Hugo module shows up as. And on the flip side, in the language family repo, it ends up looking like this. Also, sort of what you would expect. All something needs to have in order to be a Hugo module is a Go mod. This one is exceedingly simple. And it needs to have sort of like a file tree that looks like what Hugo expects. You can see more like the Hugo module docs for information about like how to correctly set up one of these, but it's pretty simple and you can use the Hugo CLI to set one up. So that's kind of the initial setting the stage of what these things even look like. One thing to note is that this Go mod is sitting inside of the language family repo, which already has a Go mod at this top level. This is the one that corresponds to like the actual build pack code. And given that we have another Go mod inside of a subdirectory, that makes this a Go submodule. And there's like a couple little weird things that come along because of that nested structure. That'll come along later. So now the things that you actually care about. First of all, as a build pack contributor, how do I edit the docs? How do I contribute? So as we saw, they live in this repo in the docs subdirectory inside of content, .NET Core MD. This is the file that is like actually the docs that are served on Paketo IO. And I have that checked out over here. So I guess let me. So if I go into docs, we've got content, and it's like in that subdirectory to comply with Hugo's expectations for setup. And I can just go in here and, you know, just say hi or something. Make it a title so it's more obvious. Okay, lovely. So I have now edited the docs in the language family. So basically, if you're in the process of like actually doing development, this would probably look like making a pull request to one of the implementation build packs and separately a pull request to the language family build pack, which is unfortunately still 2 PRs for one feature, but hopefully we can improve on this in the future. So one thing that's fun to note is that there's this script docs.sh that now sits in all of the language family repos for Paketo that you can use locally to spin up a preview of the docs site. So let's say I just made this edit and I want to see how it looks. Just kidding, I need to go back to the root. Great. So this script basically checks out and clones a little mini copy of the Paketo website repo. It uses like go mod edit to do exactly what you would do if you wanted to replace any Go module with a local copy of it. Many of you, if you've developed in Go, have probably done this. And then it uses the Hugo server command to just serve a local version of the site. And so if we open that up, we can see here's the whole entire Paketo website. And if we go to the .NET Core docs, we can see the edit that I made. So that's how you could, more substantively preview whatever changes you made to the docs with not too much effort.
Does that still do live edit? Like if you change it, does it refresh live?
So that's something that I'm actually not so clear about. I think it's supposed to, but in my experience, it's been a little bit buggy so far.
Okay.
I've seen it work better if you do the disable fast render. But even then, sometimes I'm not really sure what Hugo's doing under the hood to really decide when it doesn't work as nicely live reloading as without Hugo modules. Something to note. I hope the whole Hugo modules thing is pretty young, from Hugo's development standpoint. So I'm kind of hoping that they improve that soon. Good question. Okay, so we've just gone through one scenario here. So I'll pause for any subsequent questions about just how do I edit the docs? There's some other scenarios I'll go through after.
Just to be super clear, because whenever I hear submodule, I think Git submodule. It has absolutely nothing to do with Git submodules, right? Lovely.
Correct. Not a Git submodule, particularly a Go submodule, which I'm newish to Go, so there were a couple gotchas there that I didn't understand. This links to an explanation of kind of what's slightly different about those. But hopefully I've worked out all the kinks with automation. Any other questions? All right. Cool. So then next sort of scenario is as a Buildpack maintainer, PR reviewer, how do I review and merge the docs? What does that mean? How does that work? So now I'll go, I guess, back here. So docs changes show up in the diff of the PR. So let me actually push this little weird change. And just open pull request real quick so we can see what that looks like. It's, not that exciting. Oh, it's because I didn't make commit. Of course. Okay. Oh, kill me. All right, I'm not going to do that right now because I've just gotten myself into a bit of a Git problem. But in any event, it's just like any other PR, and you'll expect to see the diff in the file that's in the docs subdirectory. So this is the file where you'd expect to see a diff when there's an edit to the docs. And you can, again, check out that branch and run that preview script on your local to see those changes. Pretty straightforward. Now, an important thing to note here is that merging a PR with docs changes will not make those changes go live immediately. This is pretty key. And the reason for that is because, as we see in the Paketo website Go mod, the Hugo module for the docs has a version. So as with versioned Go modules, this isn't just watching for the latest thing on main, it's watching for a release. So we can safely merge PRs that have docs changes, and they won't propagate to the site, or they won't even make it to this repository until a release is cut. So that begs the question, as a Buildpack maintainer, how do I cut a release of the docs? thanks to some handy automation, literally all you would do is cut a release of the build pack. There's a workflow inside of the language family, which right now only sits in .NET Core, but can be easily rolled out across the language families, whose job is to, when a release is published, tag, like add another tag with the same, like at the same point with the name docs / that release name. And the reason this is required is because of that Go submodules thing. The Paketo website is going to be watching for changes or for tags to this Go module, which basically means watching for tags on this repository that Go docs / version. So because of this automation, you should really never have to think about this. All you do is like cut releases of the build packs the way you normally would, and you've just cut a docs release as well. Any questions about that part? All right. So then lastly, as a content subteam maintainer, how do I publish a release of the docs on the Paketo site? Because at this point still, like we've got a docs release, but we haven't like necessarily propagated that to our Paketo website repo. So how do we actually get this to go all the way through? We've got a workflow on the Paketo website repo whose job is to basically like keep that Go mod up to date. So periodically it goes out and checks for new versions of the Hugo modules. And so like, yeah, checks for versions of the Hugo modules, cleans things up, and then makes a commit if there's a diff and opens a PR. So this is like very similar to what we see across like the Paketo project where like a Go mod will get updated and a pull request will get opened. I think if we go in the history here, we can probably see one of these updates Hugo modules. Here we go. So the PR comes in, it looks like this. And it should have a diff of like just the Go mod and the Go sum, really straightforward. And these pull requests will not auto merge right now because we don't have any like auto merging set up on the Paketo website repo. And so if you're a content maintainer and you want to make the docs go live, you simply merge the pull request. And at that point, it will trigger the deploy workflow on the Paketo website repo and the docs will be live. So like that's an additional gate, I guess, on the docs going live after a build pack is released, which we can easily remove by adding a little bit of like auto approved PR automation to the website repo. Okay. Yeah.
I was gonna say this is all really cool. My one question is like, say I am a maintainer or I'm editing docs to whatever, and like I mess up, and now am I understanding it that I basically have to do a new release of the build pack to update the docs to kick off that workflow? So we just have to do a minor release of everything.
Or like a patch release. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So under this model, that's a great point. There's not really a way of sort of like jumping in between releases, I guess, to like fiddle with the docs, like a typo change, whatever. It basically is thinking about like a release of the docs and the build, like I guess the docs is like a first class citizen inside of the build packs release under this model, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's maybe a fair trade.
Yeah, so that is one drawback here. Yeah, thanks for calling that out. Yeah, other questions or feedback about this? I've outlined some like future possibilities for improvement, but first I'd love to hear feedback from folks.
I guess, how does this play with the whole, like, I think we have edit this page somewhere on the site. I'm not sure how that plays with that, or if maybe that doesn't work with it and needs to be rethought.
I'm so glad you asked. Thanks to some trickery I got it to work still, which I'm really happy about.
Cool.
I honestly couldn't tell you right this second what the heck I did. It was like a little bit of weird Hugo parameterization. It is possible though. Voila.
Magic.
So I guess a more pointed question is, so this was like a pilot, like let's do it with .NET Core to work out the kinks and see if we like it. We're at the point now where we could either abandon this or tweak it more within this language family and then roll it out, or roll it out now across the language families. So I'd love to hear which of those three things people think we should do.
I wouldn't mind like a targeted group that's larger than just .NET Core. I guess I was thinking, something where we could continue to maybe find things or like happen upon, things that work and things that don't. That's like wider than just .NET Core, but not the whole roll it out across all Buildpacks. I'm not sure if that matters though. So I'm for either all of them or appointed, like a targeted group.
I'd be for just doing it everywhere. I think it's relatively low risk for us to roll back. It's pretty straightforward. We're like, oh, this doesn't work. Pick up the markdown file, put it back in the repo. It seems pretty straightforward to do those. So I think it's like relatively low risk to just do it everywhere. I think there's like some further modifications, like down the road, we can use this for a while and see how it fits our needs, and like, some of these future possibilities are things that we should explore. But getting everything to like a parity across all the repos sounds like a good first goal.
I agree, Ryan. And as a .NET Core maintainer, it's been really nice having all the docs co-located with the code and like seeing those changes go in together and things like that. So, and I haven't noticed anything like wrong with using it when I've pushed docs. So I'm all for rolling it out everywhere as well.
I have one clarification. So this would be just for the pages on the site that are specific to the language families, and not like the configuration page that's kind of like got stuff from many things in it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I don't think there's any reason why like literally any markdown file that's in our site, like they could all live somewhere else easily with respect to Hugo modules. I don't have a clear sense of where something like the configuring Paketo Buildpacks page should live. So like I wouldn't necessarily whisk that away somewhere, but like I would know where to put all of the rest of the language families and like the builders, I guess, as well. Do you have a sense of like where the configuring Paketo Buildpacks content could or should live?
I think some of that, like if you click on it, is like the CA certs build pack, the labels build pack environment, so, but it's all just crammed into this one page. So like it could maybe be something where we break it down into subsections underneath configuring Paketo build packs, and then you could ship this stuff off more easily to specific repos.
I think there's a further conversation about in the language families themselves. They kind of are a collection of all of the docs that cover all of the implementation build packs that make them up. There maybe is a conversation about pushing some more of the documentation even further down into the implementation. So then you'd end up with like release sets of things kind of aggregating up into the doc site as they get released. That's a like much more difficult implementation to achieve, just like technically as far as automation goes. But it would help us maybe drive towards the ultimate goal of having docs very closely co-located with the code they're actually documenting.
I feel like at least splitting this stuff up would be like the configuring stuff up would be nice. I'm often like confused when I go to a language build pack and like don't know how to figure out, like I have to look at all the sub build packs to figure out how to actually use the thing, right?
I haven't seen yet how you can achieve a case where you like have a markdown file or set of markdown files like aggregated together. I think there maybe is some like cross section of Hugo features that let you do this. Like maybe these docs are included as what are called partials, and then you have like a template group that is like aggregating the partials together. But like, yeah, we'd have to explore like the technical
I wonder if we
of
should
doing that.
revisit this after the like a little farther down the road of the redesign stuff that we're going to talk about, the information architecture stuff with the designer a little bit more. Maybe it's something to talk about with in that context too.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So I think for now, I'll go ahead and like open issues to migrate like the language families to the specific place. And then for the configuring Paketo build packs, I might first like split out the markdown in Paketo website into distinct content and then migrate that as submodels or like open issues to do that. Thanks for the feedback on this. I'll copy in those notes and links right now.
All right, there's nothing that was added to the agenda while we were going through that walkthrough. Is there anything else last minute that folks wanted to bring up? Great. All right, y'all can have your 2 minutes back. See you next week.